we would consider if you're gonna come back to this later. And then if we have time, we will end with a Q&A session. So this is the team that is working on the Wardecs declaration system. And this is the main feature this team is working on. Just briefly about myself, because I haven't been involved with FanFest for about 5 years now. I've been working at CCP since '99, mainly as a game designer. But for the last 5 years, I've been working on World of Darkness and just recently returned to EVE. So let's just dip into part 1. And the first question, of course, was there actually a problem here to fix? We had already decided that Inferno was going to be war-themed, and that basically is the theme for this year, war in all its glory. And so we started to look around for, hey, what can we do that revolves around war? And war declaration system seems to be sort of a natural first step to think about. And we knew that there were some small issues there that we wanted to fix. But the question was there a need to completely redesign the system or not? So we started to look into the current system and how it's currently functioning, and look at what problems it had. And what we found was, from the data we collected, it seemed pretty evident that the war system was underutilized, it lacks a clear concept, and it's kind of doing its job, but not really. I mean, it's sure it allows for legal fighting in HISAC, but that's about it. So one of the first decisions we came to was that we wanted to give wars more structure and make them harder to get out of, because we wanted wars to be meaningful and impactful. Of course, the immediate issue here was to look at if going that route, how that would affect the different play styles that we find in a game. And because there are sort of obvious problems with one-size-fits-all systems, it's that you can't really focus them on maybe exactly what you want to focus them on, because you have to take so many needs into account. And we didn't want to create some watered-down system full of exploits and whatnot. So we explored for a little while what alternatives we had to an aggressive hardcore war system, but in the end we just decided to keep it simple and straightforward, and just make it as a general rule: if you're in a player corp or if you form a player corp, then Wardecs is just something that you have to accept as coming with it, and regardless of your play style or your preferences. This means that the only way for players to absolutely make sure that they can't be Wardecs is simply just to stay in an NPC corp, which is not ideal, but that's sort of the route we took or decided to take. And the issue that we were basically exploring here is that there are several different things that come with, or benefits of a player corp, and they can be quickly sort of divided into two main groups. One of them is the social or community side of it, you know, better ways to share stuff, better ways to communicate, a shared identity, and those things. And then on the other, it's the sort of economical benefit, so to speak. As a corporation, you are better able to reap great riches. And we looked a little bit into whether we want to separate the two and have player corps still maintain all of these things, but maybe make something that would allow for the community part, allow people to better communicate and share things and some shared identity, but without the reward benefits. But in the end, we decided that there was just, not really a great necessity for it, but that might be the case in the future. So, of course, nothing is set in stone forever, but the route that we are taking now is more aggressive, hardcore wars. But to combat this, we are adding more options for players when they are conducting war, more ways to get involved in them, and more ways to sort of deal with the fact that you're at a war. As a side thing to this is that there's now a higher chance of war sort of backfiring on the aggressor, or because entering a war is now more of a commitment, and if things go bad, that commitment goes both ways. And we wanted to add more clarity. As I said, the core of the war system is allowing for legal PvPing in high-sec, and we definitely want to maintain that function, but we want to emphasize the right incentives, and we want to try to make a system where it's meaningful to be at war regardless of whether you are conducting it in high-sec or not. And the basic way to try to accomplish this is to give wars better structure and give players more information about what's going on when you're at war. So, from all of these considerations, we extracted a few goals. And these can be summarized as follows. Tighten the war system so it becomes clear how wars start, proceed, and end. Make it very clear how the war is progressing, both for strategic and status reasons. So, EPing is always a big factor here also, so we want to also foster that a little bit. And make fighting a war a viable career path for dedicated mercenary corps. So, just a quick summary of what I've discussed here in part 1. Wars are now harder to get out of. Wars have a better structure and a clearer conclusion. Information about war status and war progress is improved. More options for corporations finding themselves at war. And a viable career path. So this is basically what we decided to go for. But let's now go to part 2, where I'll detail the changes that we've been making and are still making. So I'll start with a quick disclaimer. We are still working on this. This is slated for the Inferno release in late May. So we haven't finished, so there is some stuff that we are still undecided on that I am not mentioning, and everything in here is, of course, subject to change. But first, we started with fixing escaping wars. That sort of was the initial reason for us to start to look into this. So we started with that. And on war shielding, which means that if you have, because the war cost formula takes into account how many wars the target corporation is at. So you can have a lot of alt corps deck you, and that makes it very expensive for somebody else to deck you. So now we're basically just taking that out of the formula. The number of wars that the aggressor is in is still a modifier, so it's still going to be more expensive to declare wars. to declare many wars, but the number of wars that the target corp is unchanged. And war shedding, which is the act of joining a phony alliance when you're Wardecked and then leaving it, which leaves the war at the alliance, allows you to go back and forth and basically makes your high-sec pauses invulnerable, and we wanted to fix that. So corporations now take the wars of the alliance with them when they leave that alliance. It basically becomes new independent wars. So you can no longer escape a war by jumping into or out of an alliance. So, and the general policy on the whole right now is that if further exploits or further ways to escape a war are found, we would plug those holes. The policy right now is to make wars more impactful, and to do that we have to make sure that you can't easily escape out of them. So just a list of various small fixes that we're making. We are making further changes to the Wardeck cost formula. So now the size of the Defender Corp comes into account, meaning it's more expensive to declare war on a big corp than a small corp. And we also increased the base price for declaring on a corp from 2 to 20 million. A little bit of reasoning on the first. There are several reasons for that, but the main one is that you're basically paying for extra war targets. You know, if one of the key things when you're at a war is how many targets do I have, and I mean that's the reason why 5-man corps are almost never decked, because there's just so small chance that you will ever run into one of these 5 people. So, and in a sense, it also acts as a little bit of a deterrent to declare wars on very big corps, which is both good and bad. We're probably going to see a little bit of alt padding to sort of come in here, but that's something that will probably just spike and then plateau out. And also just in general, we wanted to make declaring war a little bit more of an ISK sink and something that you didn't jump into lightly. So another change we made is that for corps, the CEO now makes the decision to declare war. There's no more voting required. This is basically how it is for alliances, and it was just silly to not have it the same for corps. Wars can no longer be retracted by the aggressor when he wants. This again is in line with just making it more of a commitment to go enter a war, and also was required by other changes that we will come to later. This one, we're not 100% sure of exactly how we'll tackle, but this is the thinking right now of how we'll treat mutual wars, that it's basically something that the defender has to choose in the 24-hour period before the war actually becomes active, whether he wants it to be mutual or not, and it's a one-sided. Once he has chosen for it to be mutual, it will remain mutual. But we sort of haven't decided on all the details there. On the war structure, wars will now last for a minimum of a week, unless there is a surrender, which we will come to shortly. So when a war is declared, it is basically going to be active for a week. Before the week is up, the aggressor chooses whether he wants to extend it for another week or have it end. and this is basically just done through that he gets a bill, and if he pays that bill, which is basically the war cost, the war is extended for a week. And this can change from week to week based on the number of people in the target corps. So if a lot of people have left or joined them, that would modify the war cost when a bill comes up again. Either side can offer a surrender. You can only have one surrender offer active at a time. And it's basically pretty straightforward. You can just offer a formal concession of ISK, and the other side has 24 hours to respond whether they accept it or not, or make a counter offer. So that's sort of the only other way to end a war beside just having it end at the end of a weekly period. If a surrender goes through, then there is an enforced peace period of a week. This is just to make the surrender more of a meaningful option. It's not much an option if you as a defender pay the aggressor 5 billion to end the war, and the next day he just attacks you again. Another thing we're adding is a war report. So all losses inflicted by the enemy side in a war is tracked on a war report, or by each side, it should be. And so the war report details all the losses and links to killmails, and shows a timeline indicating major battles and so on. And it's here, so we have a mock-up. This is not a final piece, but it's a work in progress. But here you can see at the top the losses in ISK and ships, and the types of ships that have been inflicted, and links to killmails, and the timeline of when major battles occurred, and so on. And there are ways to filter these views and in various ways. And this view is available to all war partisans. So one more thing is that to be able to accurately show the ISK loss, we had to make sure that everything was on the market, basically, so it could have a value. And that was something that Team Game of Thrones was actually also working on, so we got, with a little help from them, we added that functionality in, so everything will be added to market, and everything that doesn't have value can now have value calculated for it, like titans and such. So, so everything that can be lost in a war has an ISK value associated with it, so that the war report is as accurate as possible. And as part of this work, we decided to also give killmails a little bit of a facelift. This shouldn't affect the API, but if it does, we'll work to make sure that the players can still extract this, or read this from the database correctly. Here's a mock-up of the new killmails. Here we can see the modules lost and the modules that weren't destroyed, the value of everything, who dealt the final blow, top damage dealers, and various other information. So again, this is a work in progress. This is not necessarily how it will look in the end, but this is something that we also want to get in there. So war history is another thing that we're adding. So every corp and alliance will now have a publicly available or viewable war history. And this will show all the active and concluded wars, and will show the losses inflicted, possibly with links to the last war report or something like that. We haven't nailed down exactly how. Allies I will get to quickly or shortly. And a further iteration, which is probably not going to get to right now, but we would really then like to extract from the war history sort of more status or rank lists, showing win-loss ratio or losses inflicted and received, and whatever we decide, maybe in Eveegate or somewhere else. But that's probably not coming in for Inferno. Character war history is also something that we are thinking about, but probably not going to get to for Inferno, but hopefully soon after. The main thinking here is that we've also been thinking a little bit about corp hopping and how we can deal with that. And the main thinking we're having right now is to just make it a sort of a status blemish rather than try to ban it or restrict it in any way. Simply have it so that it shows up as a taint on your CV, so to speak, if you have regularly left corps at war. Again, this is not top of our priority list, sadly. But we'll hopefully get to it sooner rather than later. So the ally system, this is another sort of in line of adding options to wars and making them, have so that they can evolve. So the Defender Corps can call an ally to their aid, and just want to emphasize that it's only the Defender who can call an ally, never the aggressor. And the ally is called for a particular war, and there are no restrictions to how many allies a corps can have. And the ally joins the defender side in the war and will participate in it until the war ends. So they will be tracked with the defender in the war report. It's not an independent war, they are part of the same war. An ally contract can involve an ISK transfer. This is a one-time transfer up front. It does not recur every week. The reasoning there is that would give sort of false signals or false incentives to the ally. We would then want to prolong the war just to get a payment every week. So it's just a one-time payment, and this is the only sort of formal ISK transfer that we wanted to make. People can still, like they're doing now, negotiate any kind of informal payment of, reimbursing losses or extra payment if the war prolongs or whatnot. But we're leaving that still in the informal part because otherwise it just becomes exploitable. So to help people in finding allies and advertise themselves as mercenary corps, we are creating a mercenary marketplace. Will probably not carry into the game as such, although it might. It's just sort of a working title. It will be you can get to it through the contract UI or through the war UI. And as a CEO or director, you can create a new type of contract. And this is kind of using the contract system, but a little bit differently in that it's not a finalized contract. It's basically more of an ad of, hey, I'm willing to help, or hey, I need help. And there's text fields there and some filters that people can enter of where they're located and for mercenaries how many they are, and then text fields to give price suggestions or whatever other information they want to give. But these are sort of windows into actual negotiating for an ally, where another CEO or director can come in and select an ally negotiation created by somebody else and sort of make a formal offer of, yes, I'll pay you 10 billion to be my ally, or hey, I want 10 billion to make you an ally, and this can basically go back and forth until somebody accepts. It is possible for several entities to negotiate for the same contract, but once somebody accepts it, the other is invalidated. We toyed a little bit with allowing for multiple, a single contract leading to multiple allies, but both for technical and also just usability reasons, we decided to just keep it simple, and a single ally negotiation will always lead to a single ally. And if you want more allies, you just create a new ally negotiation contract. And once somebody accepts, then a formal ally contract is concluded, and the ally will enter the war 24 hours later. So just to quickly summarize, no more war shielding or war shedding or any other kind of escaping a war. CEOs now handle war declarations. Wars last for a week unless a surrender occurs, and the week is a minimum. Wars have a war report detailing the fortunes of war. We updated the killmails. Corporations and alliances have a war history. And the war history, of course, is very important for mercenary corps to establish a reputation. You want to get an ally that has had many ally contracts before and a good success, and the war history will show how active they were, basically. They will not just show whether the war they entered was won or lost, but also how involved was the ally actually. So this should, with time, the good solid mercenary corps that actually will get involved should rise to the top of the wish list for anybody wanting an ally. So is that all? We would love to get more time on this, but yeah, first just a quick disclaimer sort of again. There are some things that we're also looking into that I don't want to mention here because they might or might not come in, and it would just sort of create confusion because we haven't decided exactly how to do it, but there are further things that we're looking into, further incentivize war between people. But between entities that are willing to fight, so to speak. That's sort of our main goal. We want to keep the option of you being able to Wardeck anybody, but we want to try to emphasize or incentivize that you really want to go for people who have sort of stuck their necks out there and are willing to fight wars. And as I said, we would love to iterate on this in the future. Things that we're looking in here is a treaty system where people can form or do non-aggression pacts or defensive treaties and stuff like that. As sort of a further iteration on the ally system. And as I mentioned previously, if we want to provide players accessible to the social tools, group chat and those things that wouldn't require a full player corporation with all the advantages that come with that. But those are things just that we are looking at as a possibility maybe sometimes in the future. And so that basically it is it. I want to remind you that we have a roundtable on war declaration system at 3 in room 4. And I think we probably have some time for some questions. I think a microphone should be available here somewhere. Yes. Yeah, maybe, where do you want people to line up? Yeah, just line up over here if you want to ask a question. Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll just repeat the question then.
Talk loud.
So the question is going to be, what is the cost going to be added for the number of people that are in a corporation? How are you going to prevent the one-man corp from decking the 3,000-man corp? You haven't done, I haven't seen anything about that brief. So what is that cost? Can you give us any more of the numbers?
So the current war, yes, the question was how much does it cost for to declare a war depending on the number of people. And the current formula is, as I said, the base price is for corporations is raised to 20 million, and then it's 500,000 per member in target corp. So wars are going to become more expensive. So if you have a 1,500-man corporation, which I think Eve University has, that's going to be pretty expensive to declare war on you. But people will get a lot of war targets. So,
what effect will allies have on the Wardeck cost for the second week?
No. The war declaration will only take the defender corp into account, because otherwise the most popular mercenary corp is going to be the 3,000-man ally corp, which everybody wants as their ally because it makes the war so expensive. So.
Hi, I was wondering, you're giving people far, far less abilities to get out of a war, which is completely understandable. However, what you're basically also doing now is pushing one of the parties, the party that is Wardecked, into a commitment that they have otherwise very little control over, because they have still no way of taking control of the Wardeck and canceling it themselves. They can surrender, but that is an option that is very rarely used, because it basically makes you a giant isk piñata if people know that you're willing to pay to get a war and let a Wardeck go away. On top of that, you do say that yes, there's a consequence because the aggressor can also not easily leave the war, but I think you guys are forgetting that there's a lot of corps doing this high-sec Wardecking that are made up of alts that basically have their main characters elsewhere. For them, a Wardeck in high-sec isn't really a commitment, it's just something to do on the side. Whereas the commitment on the side of the target of the Wardeck is a commitment they cannot get out of, they have no control over, and is a much bigger commitment on their part. It seems still very unbalanced. What do you think about that?
I agree to that. It's going to still be unbalanced, and as I said, we want to try to create incentives so that people are more willing to declare wars on somebody who is likely to be willing to fight, or at least, get aid to fight. But this is just part of the problem of this one-size-fits-all system. It's that we can never account for every part of it.
So you have no plans of including a system that allows the corp that is Wardecked, or alliance that is Wardecked, by some sort of military means or other means to take control of the Wardeck and cancel it themselves?
Yeah, no, we toyed with a few similar ideas, but there are always some edge cases or some other things that came into it, and it's just that this is a very sort of slippery slope, or a deep rabbit hole once you start to get down it and try to set up rules that account for every possibility and such. It becomes both more unwieldy, and there are more sort of loopholes and exploits in there. So yes, basically we're not saying this is necessarily perfect, and it's probably something that we need to iterate on further, but the basic line that we wanted to focus on right now is that wars are now more likely to be aggressive and hardcore. It's that of course will mean that some corporations will feel the brunt of it, but that's just how it is right now.
In the ally system, are you gonna put in like a feedback thing? Because I imagine that'd be good.
Could you repeat the question?
Are you gonna put a feedback into the the ally contract system? So I'm Wardecked. I pay 5 bill to whatever corp to ally with me to defend me, and then afterwards, if they did nothing, I get to say they were crap or they were good, or rate them either up or down or something like that.
Yeah, so you can basically give them thumbs up or thumbs down or something like that.
Yeah.
We looked at that a little bit. It sort of touches upon the whole rank list and stuff like that we want to do. Along with Eavegate and stuff like that. It's not something that is going to come out in Inferno, so at least for the time being, this is just going to be based on spreading the word around and word of mouth reputation. But as I said, in the war history, you will be able to see that if the mercenary corp you're thinking about hiring, how involved basically they were based on the losses that they inflicted and had inflicted on themselves as part of the whole. And from that, it doesn't give necessarily an accurate information, but at least gives an indication of whether these guys are just trying to grab your money and run away, or if they will actually try to help you.
It's a lot of information for a poor high-sec CEO who doesn't know anything about kills or wars or anything like that to go through, though.
Yeah, I mean, a rank system would definitely benefit, but unfortunately not something that we could get around to add this release.
War is great. Very happy to see Inferno's war-themed. Question about your war report idea. It's not unusual for the participation or performance of the logistics vessels to make a difference in an engagement. Are there any plans to recognize the contributions of the lodges in the war report?
That's a great question. The answer right now is no, but that would definitely be something we would love to add in some form later. I mean, the killmails only currently show the highest damage inflictors, but we have looked at there of trying to show others that participated in it, and this could be part of that, but we're not doing anything on that for Inferno, but hopefully later.
My question is regarding the aggressing side. The consequences for the defender is pretty clear. You either surrender, pay, or try to make them not want to continue the fight, and hence you have clear consequences. But as an attacker, you can just stop paying the bill, and that's the end of it. Why isn't there a more sort of consequence for the attacker to try to extort people and that sort of thing? Seems to be that there's no consequence for the attacker to sort of stop the war and not just pay the bill, and that way not have to surrender. Why isn't that war just going to continue until either they surrender or the defenders surrender? That would usually be how war ends.
Yeah, so this is why we wanted to have wars last for a minimum of a week and remove the retraction option from the aggressor, because if you would have kept that, then the moment the defender calls an ally, the aggressor would just retract the war and be out of it. But if the defender gets an ally quickly, the aggressor is stuck in that war for at least 5 or 6 days. So sure, it's not the same consequences as for the defender, but it's at least more consequences than there are right now.
I think in that aspect, at least have to consider that again, the aggressor would most likely not be the main characters and the alts, so they most likely would just stuck up the duration and end the war that way. Whereas the main characters, you can't really just stuck up it to the same extent. So I would encourage you might look into that for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to be able to make this more hardcore. I mean, that was basically a tack that we took to let's make wars hardcore. But just the nature of EVE and the you know, open-endedness of the things that you can, how you can set up your corporation and such, it's very hard. It's the same as with corp popping. It's very hard for us to come up with a system that enforces that corp popping can never happen.
I could then suggest that, like, you're going to blemish people who corp jumped. You could also blemish people who didn't pay the bill. In that way, they would be blemished to say, well, these guys, you can see they have stopped the wars previously by not paying their bills. They're most likely going to do that again. This guy is mostly going to jump because he's been in a war before and he jumps. So that way you could sort of also blemish those. That might actually just do the trick. You don't have to financially do it.
Yeah, I mean, these are excellent points, and you know, hopefully we can tighten the system in the future. But I mean, this is how far we were able to take it this release. But good comments. How are we on time, by the way?
Another 10 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. Let's just continue then.
Hi, I was wondering, because of the difference in commitment issue that was raised earlier, that the defender will always be more committed to a war than an attacker because of the alt factor. I was wondering if you have considered creating a war criminal status so that all other characters on a declaring account become flagged.
We haven't considered that, but I mean, we can certainly look into something like that. I mean, we don't want to. We want to keep characters on an account as separate as possible, with all the pros and cons that comes with that. But you know, it's fine to look into something like that to try to help with the alt problem.
And is it even technically feasible? That's perhaps another issue.
It's technically feasible. How, you know, how good of a solution it is the question. Yeah.
With the scaling of costs based on the number of people in Corp, have you considered limiting that to subscribed or active characters? Because if you don't, I'll tell you what will probably happen. People will start trial accounts, they will have those characters join the Corp and then not sub the account. You'll have Corps with hundreds of people in, so they're effectively un-Wardeckable, but those people aren't actually real characters playing the game, they're just lapsed characters. Yeah. Whereas if you limit it to subscribed characters, I think you'll get a much more accurate picture. And if you don't do that, by the way, guys, you heard it here first.
That's a very good point, and something that we should be able to put in there, you know, to not count trial accounts. That we should be very able to do that. It's not like that right now, but very good suggestion.
Yeah, I'm just curious why you're going to blemish characters that hop out of corpse, but you know, you mark them, but you're not going to mark the people you catch bodying.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, why are you going to penalize people and give them a bad reputation by marking their character for leaving a corp during a war, but not do it to botters that you catch?
So penalize people for getting out of war, but I missed the last part.
Why aren't you going to do it to botters?
You're
going to mark their accounts, but you're going to mark people's accounts that they don't want to fight.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, botters should be treated badly as well. I'm not sure that marking them like this would necessarily be the best way to do it, but I think there are better ways of dealing with bots. But absolutely, I mean, if we start going down this route and already have support for sort of giving people bad reputation through this, I mean, we could definitely extend that to other things.
So the question is, it seems like there's a lot of good progress being made towards the war decking, especially with the shielding and getting out of the Wardecs when they come through. But a lot of this seems half-baked and very in favor of the aggressor. Now, not that I personally care too much as a nullsec alliance, we really don't care too much, but there's a lot of either alt alliances or small alliances or corps that are not really interested into this. And I understand that New Eden's a bad place and this kind of stuff happens, but this is forcing them even further into a type of gameplay that they have no interest in and making it even harder for them to get out of it. I understand that the loopholes shouldn't necessarily be there, but when you flag them as a corp that surrenders, that's just going to put a bigger target on their back. There's a lot of people in HiSec that really just don't necessarily want to have any part of this. And like I said, sucks to be them to an extent, but this doesn't seem to deal with that at all.
No, and it's not intended to. As I said, we wanted to make wars more aggressive and hardcore, and that's just sort of unnecessarily evil with going this route. We want wars to be meaningful, and
but meaningful is good. But when you are war decking an alliance that does nothing but HiSec research, I mean, where's the meaning in what's that?
The key.
No, and that's very true. But I'm just saying, it seems to be one-sided and
yes, I understand the question. The key thing is that the moment we start to set up some rules to protect some people that don't want to get involved in war, we both water down the war mechanics and make them less meaningful, and we create possible shields for people to hide behind. And we did look extensively into options like that, but decided that we didn't want to go that route right now, that we are going to make this more hardcore, and if you are in a player corp, you just have to accept the fact that you can't be war decked whether you want it or not. That will be the current change.
Two quick questions. For the new war deck system and calculation, what is or what will be the definition of a corporate member? We need to know that. And also, is the war deck against an alliance, a corporation, or at the option of the war decking corporation?
On the last part, you just like now, you choose whether you're declaring war on an alliance or a corporation. Basically, the only difference is that the base price is 20 million for a corp and 50 million for an alliance. Otherwise, you just then pay for the membership of either the corp or an alliance. On the first part, currently we're just counting every member, but I thought the suggestion on trial accounts was very good, and that's probably something that we're going to enforce. But other than that, it's basically just any character on a subscribed account.
Very good, thank you.
Can the ally be an alliance or only a corp?
It can be either.
And what about remote decking?
That we're not tackling that at all we're not tackling war remote wrapping at all with the war system. That is part of Crime Watch.
No, they said Wardecs and the Crime Watch, they said we're not talking about Wardecs. So which one is it? We've asked the question.
On remote wrapping, we are not dealing with that at all in the war declaration system. I don't know what they said in Crime Watch, but we are not touching it at all. So, but I'll look into it for you. If they said that, then there's obviously some miscommunication going on. Maybe they're thinking we're doing something and we think they're doing something. We definitely need to look into it, but we don't feel it's part of the war system. It's part of Crime Watch in our mind.
But it's part of HiSec wars at the moment.
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, we're not touching that at all, but I look into to make sure that it's treated somewhere. Okay, time's up, sorry guys, but we'll be, again, I remind you of the roundtable at 3 o'clock. So hope to see some of you there. Thank you.